Wheated?
Yes. Wheated.
They use wheat?
Right. So is bread wheated?
I don't think so.
Right. No, we're just talking about wheat. That term is used for bourbon.
Right, but if a thing is used, if something is an ingredient, at what point is, I guess in this case, the wheat is non-essential.
Not for bourbon. It's very essential.
Well,
especially to the flavor.
I think that's the point Dave is trying to make is if it already has wheat, why is it?
if it's an
wheated?
essential ingredient, as in the thing cannot be made without it, why is it wheated? What makes it wheated?
It's like
Wheated, as opposed to just, well, of course, you don't say bread is wheated. You can't make bread without wheat. Therefore, it's dumb to say
It's like rye whiskey.
a wheated.
saying-
It's the same thing as rye.
No, because you can make whiskey without rye. So
And you can make whiskey without wheat.
that's what I was starting to say there as well, was because it's not essential. And then you just said it was essential.
It's essential to wheated whiskey.
It's not essential to whiskey,
No. I agree.
which is what I was saying.
Oh. I think we're saying the same thing. Shockingly.
Don't try to outdo me, okay? I don't like it.
Good evening, guys. All right, let's get going, Juan. Is that okay with you? Are you good with that, Juan?
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. I hope Dave doesn't mess this episode up.
Me too. You can't click that button yet.
Yeah, what do you do? What's going on?
I'm clicking record here.
No, look, Juan, all of the things on the left over there on Cubase, there's none of them are on the record. Hold on, Dave will help you.
Well, I thought you said you weren't going to put them.
No, they all have to. All the mics have to be turned on.
Oh.
You don't have to do you don't have to do anything different than what you always do. If I want to change the intro,
Okay. Why do you have 3 tracks?
because in case we have another person.
Not like now.
Okay, you ready?
Let's do this.
Warning, the Catholic Man Show contains high levels of manliness. It's simple, really. You either want to grow in virtue and holiness, or you want to be a sissy, whiny baby. If you choose to move forward, grab your whiskey glass, because the Catholic Man Show is starting right
Now. Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. Welcome all fellow dragon slayers. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. Adam Minahan here, sitting with David Niles. Juan on the buttons, Mr. Producer himself this evening. In studio. Did I say in studio already?
I don't think so.
We're in studio. Dave, I'm excited about this episode. We get a whiskey that we get to try that we've never tried before.
Yeah.
And somebody sent it to us. I'm always a big fan when people send us whiskeys.
Send us your favorite one. We'll put it on the show.
Yeah, and we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah.
This one we'll shout out to. Okay, so I'll let you give your pronunciation, and then I'll try to give my pronunciation.
Okay. Let me just see.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Last name.
Oh yes, of course. Ryan Burchett.
Burchett. Okay. It's that, maybe Ryan Burchet.
Could be Burchet.
Could be Burchet.
Typically, because it does have a double T ending.
Correct.
Okay, so that is a little confusing for me as an American. You
I'm
know
not
what I mean?
Linguistist either.
I'm not a linguistist.
Yeah.
A linguist, I think, is the word you're.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a linguist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, but
Words are hard.
I think that everyone believes you now.
That was just me
I'm
exercising.
not linguistist.
Linguist. Yeah.
You could say I'm not a linguistic person,
I guess.
Right. But also a linguist would be it depends on if you wanted to be an adjective or a noun.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying there?
We're starting out strong.
Yeah.
I apologize.
But there's no E after the double T. So like
right. So
otherwise, and in that case, I would be with you on the Burchet.
Okay. Well, either way, he's from they sent us this whiskey, this wheated whiskey this evening. It's from Mississippi River Distilling Company. Let's try some. It's called Cody Road. It's a single barrel straight bourbon whiskey. It's 105 proof.
Yeah, barrel strength, 105 proof.
Yes,
is what it said on the bottle, I believe.
And all of their grain that they get comes from 25 miles of the distillery. So that's
cool.
This is literally
like a very local thing.
Yes.
Where is it from?
It is from LeClaire, Iowa.
Right on.
This is really fruit of the earth and work of human hands right here.
Amen.
So it also suggests to add a little bit of water.
For the big flavor.
So we'll try it without water first, and then I have a little dropper with our very high-tech dropper.
I see that.
Yes, it works.
Yeah.
So
swimmingly.
Let's try this. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
And cheers to Jesus.
Cheers. I'm a big fan of wheated whiskeys in general.
The word wheated is a difficult word. We were just discussing it before the episode began, and it's not used very often. So when you say wheated, it almost sounds like you're saying we did something that we did. So I felt the need to say, and so did you, wheated. Which also makes you sound funny when you try to do that. But yes, it is 20% wheat. So the definition to be a bourbon is that you have to be at least 50% corn. So this is 70% corn, 20% wheat, 10% barley. So that's why it's wheated, because the wheat you don't need wheat to be a bourbon. So another good example would be like Maker's Mark. They use a red wheat. And the wheat gives it some sweetness sometimes. I'm not sure. How is this one? I haven't tried it yet.
It's good. It has a nice bite. It's very peppery at the very end, which I enjoy. But you kind of expect that with it being 105 proof.
Yeah, that's true.
It says Buffalo Bill Cody lived life large at this location, and he was born just a mile from their distillery. So they honor this legend with a big whiskey.
Wonder what it means to live life large. Like, what does that look like?
I don't know.
Do you think that's a good question?
I guess. What do you think about the whiskey?
I think it's good, especially for 105 proof. It's smooth.
It is.
I mean, that's a lot of that's a high percentage to round out so that it's smooth like this.
It has some caramel notes to it, a little vanilla. I'm interested to see what happens whenever you add water though to it, because I think that it's gonna tone down the bite at the end. The peppery would be do you want some?
Yes.
Okay, good,
Oh, that's enough. Thank you.
Because I accidentally dropped a couple drops in there
which
already.
Which is kind of inappropriate.
Right.
It's sort of like touching another, you're sitting next to a dude at dinner and you just reach over and grab a piece of chicken off of his plate. It's like, don't touch my plate. You don't just drop water into another man's whiskey.
I agree. That really is good. It mellows it out a little bit.
Yeah. It is so interesting.
Good.
We don't do this enough on the show. Adding just a few drops of water, it really is incredible how much it can change a whiskey.
No doubt.
For good or for bad, maybe, but worth exploring.
As we sip this alcohol, so Ryan, thank you so much. Do you want to give it a toast to Ryan? I gave the last couple toasts. Why don't you give a toast to Ryan?
Ryan, I raise my glass to you. I thank you for your generosity, for your manliness, for exercising what could be the virtue of
generosity,
magnificence,
and magnificence.
Because this is a public act. Because this show's all over the world. Anyway, may we drink together in heaven of the finest drink that there is.
Cheers. Way to go, Ryan. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Dave, this is an exciting next couple of weeks for us on the Catholic Man Show. One, we have our Catholic Man Show shirts that are now out and available. You're wearing one right now. I should have worn one. I just did not think about it.
I really thought you would be wearing one.
I'm sorry. That was my fault.
When you have a John Wayne shirt on, that's kind of cool, but...
Yes. So you can go to thecatholicmanshow.com and buy a Catholic Man Show shirt.
There are 4 of them available.
4 different types. And if you're a Council of Man member, you get the shirts at cost.
Yeah.
With a discount code. So you get that, which is kind of a benefit. Also,
So if you want to join the Council of Man, go to thecatholicmanshow.com. You can find all the necessary information there to do that. So you
or
can
patreon.com/thecatholicmanshow.
right, yeah. So yeah. Anyway, do that because it's a cool thing to do.
Next week is a big week for us. Do we want to? I guess we should.
Yeah,
Let's go ahead.
I think we should. So we're going to be on Catholic Answers Live, both hours next Friday.
Right.
They're making
a week from this Friday.
Okay, yes, not this Friday.
Right. A week from this Friday.
What is the date? What is the date on that?
23rd?
The 23rd? Anyway, Catholic Answers is making a huge mistake, but yes,
the 23rd.
But
So we're really excited.
that's just the way. Sometimes that's the way it rolls. And
So Cy Kellett is coming into Tulsa. He's going to be giving a talk in Tulsa, but also he's going to be doing Catholic Answers Live in Tulsa, and we're going to be the guest. So the first hour, we're going to be talking about true friendship, authentic friendship.
Yeah.
And then the second hour, we're going to talk about roles of fatherhood. So one thing you guys can do is tune in and listen. One thing you cannot do is try to stump us. That's not okay. You can throw softball questions for us, but don't try to stump us.
yeah,
Don't be a
because
jerk.
I'll Socratic method it on you.
Don't try
and
to
just
be a
ask
jerk.
you questions about your question.
So that's really exciting. I'm excited about that. That'll be fun.
I am too. I'm also a little nervous. I'm very nervous about it. Kind of. I am. In my own way, I'm nervous.
Well, the good news is that we just gave a talk on true friendship at the Courage Conference.
I am somewhat relieved about that.
So I feel like that topic is pretty strong for us because we just did that. And roles of fatherhood, we can. There's no speculative theology or anything like that.
Right.
When it comes to these two topics, so we don't have to worry about for the most part, we don't have to worry about material heresy or anything like that with these topics, which is a very good thing.
That is relieving. You're right. And even with the authentic friendship, essentially we're just ripping off Aristotle the whole time. So it's like we're not even having to
Or Socrates.
come up with insights.
Right. It's not even our.
Because it's just, hey, let me share what these other smart people said.
Right.
Because I read them. You could have easily done the same, but
Right.
instead you can just call in and ask us a question.
So it'll be fun. I'm excited to have Cy here. He seems like he's a lot of fun. I've never met him before in person. We've had a chance to talk to him over the radio.
Seems like he has a young spirit. I don't know if that you think so. Like
maybe
he has a youthfulness about him. I think.
I think so. I mean, it seems like it.
Yeah.
He fits really well. I mean, he jokes a lot, so it'll be very lighthearted. It should be a lot of fun.
I've never actually talked to him.
Yeah, we've talked to him on the radio.
I mean, like talk to him.
Right. Okay.
But I feel like he gets me.
Well, that doesn't make me feel any better.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that doesn't make me feel any better though.
Why?
Because.
You jealous?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Jealousy is hideous. Oh.
Another thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up the Catholic Man Show Campout registrations. I've been getting a ton of emails about the Catholic Man Show Campout reservation. So here's how it's going to work for those who've been asking me. We're going to open it up. The first rights of everybody has the first right of refusal who's in the Council of Man, who support
So we're
going
to let them sign up first.
We're going to let them sign up first. So if you are a Council of Man member, you have the opportunity to sign up first.
Yeah.
Once that has taken place, we've given them a week or so, then we'll open it up to the public. You can go to thecatholicmanshow.com. The Campout tab is on there. You can check that out and you can sign. Now we're only going to open it up to a certain amount of people because we don't want it to be too big where it loses its intimacy.
Well, also the monks.
Right.
They've asked us to limit it as well. So.
Right. So it's going to be at Clear Creek Abbey, outside of Tulsa. We're going to have people from all over the U.S. coming in. Actually, and
Canada.
And Canada. So it should be a lot of fun. So we have a lot of things coming up on the Catholic Man Show. When we get back, we're going to jump into the man gear and the man topic. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Who's coming from Canada?
One of our council members.
I can't remember his name. I can't remember.
And we couldn't divulge such information publicly since signups have not been opened up. I mean, that would be it would be a compliance violation.
In all honesty, I literally about every week I'm getting an email from somebody asking me, thinking that it's already been opened and closed because it shows 0 entries available. Even though right above that it says 2019 signups have not opened yet, but they just see the
They
zero.
see the zero and panic.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so it's good to it's gonna be good to open it up.
I think it's going to fill up quick.
I think it will be. I think it will too.
I wonder if we'll have any local people there.
My dad said he's gonna go a week early and mow the whole place down.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow, that would be great.
so that way when we get there, we should be.
Hmm.
But he has
Ready to go.
A rider one?
Yeah, he has a riding lawnmower.
Good.
So anyway,
That'll be cool.
yes.
Because if it's not mowed, it's just worse.
Well, we ended up mowing it.
Right. But it was wet and it was hard to do.
Right.
But it's good to have it done early because then the bugs go away.
Correct. That's kind of the plan.
Have you ever done that? You know, where you're on vacation or something, your grass, or you just don't mow, and your grass gets really tall, and then you mow it, and all of a sudden the birds, you see them swarm your yard, and,
And the squirrels, the birds and squirrels.
yeah, they just start feasting on all the bugs in your yard. Yeah.
Well, and what we can do, they sell this like sand spray or like that you can just spray it everywhere and you'll kill the bugs.
Yeah, like a fogger.
Yeah. I don't think the monks would want us spraying chemicals on the field, but
Mm.
they kind of, I think, are anti-chemical in general.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Juan, do you want a little bit of water?
I do.
There you go.
I just hope it doesn't have any like kids.
It's Berkey.
kids syrupy.
No, it's Berkey water, and it's a clean dropper.
The dropper.
You have a Berkey?
Yes.
Do you attend the Latin Mass?
Yes.
I knew it.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
I don't.
If you're listening
I don't,
at home,
I
and
don't
you-
attend the Latin Mass exclusively, but yes, I do
Right.
attend it.
Yeah. If you at home are listening and you know what a Berkey is and you have one, I'm guessing you attend the Latin Mass on a
That may just be a Tulsa thing.
somewhat regular basis. No, it's not.
It's worldwide.
It's a fact. They're correlated.
Is it a correlation or causation?
It's correlation.
It's correlation.
Yes.
Can I see your phone so I can read the questions?
There's no questions.
Okay.
I've been looking.
No comments.
Nah.
Margot commented.
Yeah, there's no questions.
Let's
Okay,
let's
let's
carry
keep
on.
going.
Sally Forth. Hey, my wife is watching. Hi, Pamela. I love you.
She can't get enough of you.
I'd like to dedicate this episode to my wife. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles. Here with Adam Minahan. And of course, Don Juan on the button machine. We're drinking a little bit of Cody Road bourbon. It is a good bourbon. I wonder how did he say what the retail price is?
He did not.
Of said bourbon. I mean, when you give someone a gift, it's
It's not like you say.
not a usual thing to say, "Hey, I got this for you. It cost $50."
Right. I'm not sure.
That would be a little bit weird, but
But you can go to.
I'm sure you can Google it.
Yeah, you can go to mrdistilling.com and you can find all of their whiskeys.
M or ducks. MR ducks.
MR Distilling.
MR Distilling.
MississippiRiverDistilling.com.
Ah, okay. Yeah. You know what? It's such a good time to be alive because every day there's a new distillery or brewery opening up, doing something incredible. The baby boomer generation is such a poverty of beverages.
Along with other things.
Drinking Bud Light and Miller Lite their whole life, thinking they knew what was good. And they had no idea. Yeah. Oh, the horror. I will drink a Bud Light if someone gives it to me. I will even be appreciative of it. Just for the record, I'm not that guy. Still.
I had some Coors Lights this week. Coors Lights this week.
It's Coors Light.
Coors.
It's CRRRS.
Coors Light.
Coors.
I had some of that this weekend, sitting by the pool.
And it's also CRRSLAT. Coors Light.
I'm glad to know.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the gear.
Okay. pretty excited. This was your idea for this gear.
Actually, it was not my idea.
Oh.
I cannot take credit for it because we had a Council of Man
The
member.
the truth comes out. You tell me I've got this great idea for a man gear.
I said I have a man gear for us.
Yeah. Let's see why that's misleading.
2 days in a row.
A Council of Man member, Daniel Monaco, sent us an email and gave us like a list of here's some things that I thought of.
Yeah, he had a lot of stuff in that email. I saw that email.
Which was really nice. One of them he suggested was a paracord, which was going to be our gear today.
Totally great. It's like rope except stronger.
Yes.
It is rope, but I really don't know what makes it. It's just woven more, I think, and it's probably made of like plastic fibers or
Nylon.
Nylon.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you get
is it plastic, right?
USG contractor type of paracord because that's like the real stuff. That's the real McCoy.
Yeah. I've actually noticed this. Well, I have suspected that I've noticed this, that there are a lot of knockoff paracords floating around hardware stores these days because you'll go and there's a price disparity, between these things, and you think, why does this one cost so much more?
Right.
Also, look for things like UV resistant.
That's a good idea.
Because the sun is what will just destroy stuff. You leave, especially plastics. If you leave plastic outside on your back porch, you'll notice one day that if only one side is exposed to the sun, it's turning a white color, and the other side is still a nice green or whatever it is. And so UV resistant paracord, because often when I use paracord, it's for stuff that I leave outside. In fact, recently I have some of these chairs on our back porch. I don't know what they're actually called. I call them anti-gravity chairs. It's just a chair that reclines a lot. It'll lay zero gravity chairs.
Anti-gravity. Do you have any anti-gravity potion?
That would be a big seller. Okay. But the cord on them, which holds up the chair itself, just disintegrated in the sun. It took a few years, but I just went and got some paracord and laced it back up. Still good, because they were kind of expensive, I think. I looked at replacing them, and I said, I'm not doing that.
Right. I keep paracord in my truck, in my glove box.
Yeah.
What happened that made me do this...
That's a good idea.
It is a good idea. What happened that made me do this is I was making a dump run where I had a bunch of sticks and stuff in my...
You were hauling stuff to the dump.
Yes.
Not like running to the bathroom. Or...
No. Okay. No. And I had a bunch of stuff that I had to take to the dump, and I used the come-alongs to strap it all down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I made a rookie mistake and took those come-alongs off and just kind of threw them down on the ground to unload, and I forgot to grab them.
Boomer.
And I did not realize it. I did not realize it until I got back with my second load. I was trying to strap it down, didn't realize it, but I knew I had paracord in my glove box, and I was able to still push it all, keep it all down. So that's I use paracord a lot just to tie things down. Now, one thing that's super embarrassing for me.
Ooh, I like how this is starting.
is I am terrible at knots. I am so terrible at making making slip knots and different types of making them taut. I'll get it all put down, all strapped down, and okay, I just gotta tie this knot, and I tie it, and then it's everything, all the pressure is released, and it's dang it, start all over again. It's super embarrassing that I can't tie a knot that keeps things down.
After we're done,
you're gonna show me?
No, you can learn it yourself. But every man should know how to tie a half hitch and a taut line, and a bowline if you feel like expanding. The bowline is less versatile, doesn't slide. But the thing about a good bowline knot is that when it's tied, it's tied. Okay, so there are a few qualities that make a knot a good knot. One of them is that the knot is easily untied. So a good knot holds where you want it to hold and can easily be undone when you want to undo it. When I tie knots, the taut line is by far the most versatile, because you can use it to anchor onto a pole, or if you want it to slide, it can slide. It's a slip knot that just works great all the time. Sometimes though, you just need to lash something. That's where the half hitch comes in. Those two knots, and then the square knot.
I always end up trying to do the square knot, but
you're not going to ever be able to tie a square knot where there's no slack.
Right.
There's always going to be a lot of slack when you're
Right.
done.
That's the issue that I always have.
Yeah. So that's why the taut line, I use that by far the most, other than tying my shoes. That I'm not counting.
Is that a Boy Scout thing?
I did learn it in the Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, I only made it to Cub Scouts and then I bailed, which is why I
Yeah, you missed out on knots.
I can do fisherman's knot.
A fisherman knot, that's a good one.
That's a good one to know.
It's laborious to tie.
It is.
Because you sit there and you twist and you twist and
right.
twist, and then you try to get it through the little hole.
Right.
And then that's where the hard part begins, because now you got to like
Loop it back.
somehow like squirm your fingers around and
Right.
get it and put it back. Yeah. It's a
a
good
tough
knot, but it's sometimes it takes me like 3 tries.
Yeah, especially first of the season.
And you're trying not to hook yourself the whole time.
Right. That's
Right.
another thing.
Yeah.
So
Not to impale the end of my finger. I want to avoid that.
absolutely.
I do.
Absolutely. Anything else about the paracord?
It's awesome because it holds so much weight. A thin rope holds a lot
Because
of weight.
it used to be originally it was called a parachute cord,
Oh, really?
and because they were using them for
That's
parachutes.
where it comes from.
That's my understanding.
Fascinating. You know what? That makes sense.
They actually even used it to help repair the Hubble telescope in in space.
Really?
They used paracord to help repair that. I read that online a while back ago.
Fascinating.
So it was like, dang. It's like Velcro, paracords, super glue. What else do you need in space?
Yeah.
Seems like they fix everything with those 3 things.
They make some really, really thin paracord too, which can come in really handy in the right situation. Whatever, sometimes you need something that's a nice thin rope to fit to loop into stuff or whatever.
What? Like a rosary.
Kind of like, the size of a rosary. Like on the Catholic Man Show rosary. Yeah.
The Catholic Mantra rosary.
What's it called? I think people call it mini paracord, but there's another name. Jonathan Conrad told us it's this rope. People call it mini paracord.
CatholicWoodworker.com. You can get the Catholic Man Show rosary
Totally
there.
check it out.
Or you can go to
Or other sweet rosaries at his website too.
yes, that are indestructible. My kids, my boys have not been able to break one of his rosaries. That's saying something, because my boys, as we're praying the rosary, they're pulling it apart. They put the rosary on their feet and they do leg extensions with the rosary. It's ridiculous. And I have to continue to tell them we don't do that with the rosary. But for boys, it's just
They're not. It's not a choice they're making. They're just.
it's just like that's what they're doing.
Yeah. They just. Yeah.
So it's very durable. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Wonderful. I'm glad that your kids are testing it, and not mine.
Well, that's the difference between boys and girls.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, it's good to know. I'm glad it's been tested by someone.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Very cool.
My boys have put it through the ringer.
Nice.
And back.
Okay. Well
So-
done, Jonathan.
Yes.
Well done.
CatholicWoodworker.com is where to go for the
Yeah.
Catholic Man Show rosary.
So I recently saw some glow-in-the-dark paracord. That would be kind of cool.
I'm not sure what you would use it for.
You know what would be handy?
What?
On the tent stakes, when you put up a tent,
Mm-hmm.
at night, you can never see those strings going out from your tent.
Mhm.
But if they glowed in the dark, you wouldn't.
Reflective tape, dude. You just use reflective tape.
Yeah, I mean that would work too. But it'd be
Yes.
kind of cool to have glow in the dark.
If it worked.
Yeah, I don't know if it does.
A lot of glow in the dark stuff really doesn't work.
Yeah, I presume that this does. And in that particular usage, it wouldn't have to glow for very long.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few hours into darkness
Right.
probably would be enough.
Sure. So the paracord, many uses for the paracord.
Find it at your local hardware store.
Yes. When we get back, we're going to jump into the topic, which is obedience. Be an interesting topic. It's Dave's topic. So we'll see how it goes. If you guys hate it, you can send him an email and tell him how much you hate it.
Yeah.
Sitting here drinking a little bit of Cody Road whiskey. More on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. Whew. I need to get my notes out. Because I did actually take... I wonder if I have this synced up with my notes on my phone. That'd be nice if I did. Be nicer. Oh, this is turned on. Good. Dude, I was reading a little bit of that you sent me. I couldn't read it all, obviously.
It was long.
It was long.
But what a crazy book, right?
yeah, it is a
That's
crazy
one of those books, sort of like up there with Divine Mercy in My Soul. Like, you have words from Jesus. I mean, obviously it's not the Bible, but
Right.
very specific.
Private revelation.
Private revelation, words of Jesus.
What book?
It is called The Dialogue of the...
Oh, I'm going to lose battery here.
What are the angels? It's the Seraphic... The Dialogue of the Seraphic...
That's right. Seraphim. Is
Seraphic.
that... Okay.
Of the Seraphic Saint... Or the...
Doctor?
Seraphic Doctor Catherine of Siena.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, she was dictating things that the Lord was revealing to her in a state of ecstasy, and people were writing it down.
This is what we're going to be saying on the show, so...
Yeah.
Hold on. Hey, but you guys need to listen to Catholic Answers Live when we're on. So that way they'll at least have it, make sure to keep us on for the full 2 hours. If we only have 3 people watching it, it'd be both of our parents and Juan, and we're in trouble.
There'll be people listening.
And Jim.
Yeah, Jim Spencer will listen.
Jim, yeah.
And Margot.
And Margot, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Shall we?
yeah, let's get going. Hey, how are you gonna... Well, I'll just let you start it.
Let's start with the Catechism
Okay.
and walk through that stuff,
Okay.
and then talk about personal.
Well, I'm gonna let you do that
personalized. Let me pull it up. I should pull that up. Wait, Juan, don't start yet.
because I don't have that in front of me. Because what I have in front of me are the 3 forms of obedience based off of Saint Ignatius, a few quotes, and the virtues that lie within obedience.
Yes.
Or how obedience is a sub-virtue. That's all. I mean, that's all I have.
Of.
Prudence.
Okay.
And a sign that you have obedience is patience.
Patience. Right.
What about...
So we're
What's
really
Saint-
testing Juan's patience to make sure that he is obedient.
And our listeners.
And our listeners.
Do you have what Saint Charbel has to say about obedience?
I do not have that. What books did he write? Do you know? I don't even know.
It's right there.
Yes, I do know that.
That's why I thought of him.
Okay.
All right, we're ready, Juan. Thank you, my friend. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I am bringing us back in from the break. If you're listening via radio, welcome back from the break, and make sure you tune into Catholic Answers Live on the 23rd. Cy Kellett is going to be in Tulsa, and we will be on Catholic Answers Live for 2 full hours from 5 to 7 Oklahoma time. Our topic today is obedience.
Obedience.
David,
This is a topic I cannot believe we have not covered. I know that we've talked about obedience on different episodes, but we haven't dedicated an episode to it yet.
It's really funny whenever we have specific topics or topics like this that are like, we haven't done that yet.
Right.
It's been happening to us a lot recently. Like when we did the Good Life.
Mm-hmm.
Why have we not?
Yeah.
When we run into new virtues that we haven't really read about a whole lot, it's like
Right, but I have felt like for a while now we've exhausted the main virtues. We've done all the main virtues. This is the way I've felt. I mean, we even did stuff like I mentioned earlier, magnificence. We did the virtue of magnificence,
right.
but not obedience.
It's crazy.
Weird. Totally weird. Anyway, so we're going to do it now. The Catechism has there's a good section on obedience. So, definitions. Number one, define your terms.
That's always a great way to start.
Obedience, according to the Catechism, is the submission to the authority of God which requires everyone to obey the divine law.
Okay.
That is all obedience. Whether it's, and it goes on, there's more, but whether you're talking about obedience to the state, to your mom, to God, to the church, whoever, it is all because of authority to God, which requires us all to obey the divine law.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody only has authority inasmuch as they participate in the authority handed to them by God.
And the authority that they are given isn't for their own sake.
Correct.
It's for those
Which they govern.
which they govern.
Yeah. So the state can never tell you you can't go to church on Sunday. They don't have the authority to do that.
Right.
So obedience to the church is required in those things which pertain to our salvation. So the church couldn't tell you you cannot drive under 40 miles an hour or something like that.
Right.
They couldn't tell you who to vote for. They can say, supporting these causes is intrinsically evil.
Mm-hmm.
They can say things like voting for someone who's pro-choice because they're pro-choice, intentionally voting for a pro-choice candidate because they're that's the reason you're voting for them, is a mortal sin.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that. But once
Because
again,
it's
that's
a moral
because
thing.
the politics have entered the realm of
Morality.
morality. Okay, not because morality is imposing itself in politics. It's because politics is getting way off course.
Well, I
into
think
the
politics by its nature always goes into...
there's definitely some natural overlap.
Right.
But when the politics is saying, yes, it's cool to kill people, that's fine. Innocent
That's-
people, it's cool to kill them.
That's an issue.
Yeah, obviously. So, but the same is true about the church, where the church, when the church doesn't play in its lane, for instance, like let's say the church is making statements about climate change.
Which they can. You can make statements, but it's not authoritative.
The church can give a
I
general
would
guiding
guess,
principles
maybe.
about how to be good stewards of things.
Mm-hmm.
But the church should not be entering into. I don't think it's the church's place, and I mean capital C church. I don't mean individual clergy, because there have been many scientists that were priests, who made important scientific discoveries. They themselves, as scientists, certainly have a place in the scientific community, but not as the church. When they speak on scientific matters, they do so as a scientist, not as a priest. Okay, there's a difference there. So the church can say, this is how you should always take care of things. Be good stewards of that. These are biblical principles. Definitely, we're all about that. But when it comes to science and what specific data points are or whatever, it's just not really the church's place. You see what I'm saying? Or you don't like that example? Fine, pick a different example. But the church has its own lane. So does the state. And we exercise different areas of God's authority. Ultimately, it's all about divine authority.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just we as obeyers, people who are being obedient to the authority, we need to know who to listen to. It's not hard to do. You just listen to the state in the places that they have the authority over your life. So, and we are also obedience. Obedience is due to legitimate civil authority, which has its origin in God for the sake of the common good and order of society.
So
Okay.
there's the overlap that we kind of were talking about.
Right. So that's the purpose of government, is to order society for the common good.
Mm-hmm. Which would follow natural law. Which
Correct.
should follow natural law.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could do a topic on this someday. I'm not near. We'd have to have a guest for this topic, but about the whole common good thing versus social contract.
Mm.
The title of it is escaping my integralism.
Integralism.
In-
Integralism.
Integralism.
Yeah.
That one, someone needs to come out definitively and say how to say the word. And it's an interesting topic anyway. So the Catechism continues saying the fourth commandment obliges children to obey their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one obedience, also known as piety. That's the virtue of piety. Piety is certainly that anyway. Piety
Sure.
is a little bit more than simply obeying your parents. But
Right.
That is mostly what it is.
It is a pious act to obey your parents.
Right, yeah. In fact, we did an episode on piety.
That we didn't air.
That never aired. But essentially, piety...
Sour grapes.
We associate piety now with holiness because that really the definition of piety in its most basic form is obedience to your parents. And that also would include God. As God our Father, we have, we owe him obedience. And so people associate, I think often, that type of obedience to God, which could be called piety, as holiness.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to see how those two get confused. But then the Catechism goes on to talk about obedience of faith. It says the first obedience is that of faith, to listen and freely submit to the Word of God.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think
It's interesting that most of the time you hear obey in the Bible is the Pauline books. St. Paul typically is the one who uses the word obey.
Yeah, or submission.
So there's actually two different ways of obedience used in the Bible. I read this as kind of a dorky thing, but it talked about the Greek words.
Interesting.
But they say one of them is like to hear, listen, and to carry out. So like in the Bible when it says, "Hear, O Israel," it's kind of the obey, like listen up and hear this.
Mm-hmm.
To obey.
Do what I say.
And then the other word, it's like a homoousi something. I can't.
Homoousius?
No. I don't remember the Greek word, but it means actually submission, like submit to the will, submit your will. It's like be subordinate.
So one of them is an external act,
Like kind of like,
and the other one would involve an internal give your will over to this person. So one of them is, I don't care if you want to or not, just obey. And then the other one is, align your will with mine. Is that? Am I
kind of
picking up what you're putting down?
I think so. I mean, this is...
Because those two are not the same.
Correct. And actually St. Ignatius talks about this. He has the letter of obedience. He wrote this. Did you...
I did not.
Okay, good. No. I didn't want to steal your thunder.
No, please.
So in the Jesuits, like this is his prize writing is on obedience, and it's been talked about for a really, really long time. Basically, since he wrote it, it's been kind of controversial / not controversial, but used a lot and discussed a lot. The Dominicans kind of have talked about it as well. He talks about there's 3 different forms of obedience. He talks about that there's an external form of obedience, meaning like if your superior tells you you do this, you just, even if you don't want to or you don't like it or you have a bad attitude about it, you just do it. You carry it out.
Yeah.
The next one would be conformity of the will, meaning that, okay, he tells me to do this, I'm going to carry it out, and I want to do this. And then the last one is conformity of the mind or the intellect, which is kind of where the Dominicans and the Jesuits split here. This is where they kind of had, not issues, but where they kind of had disagreements on this, because the conformity of the mind or intellect means I'm uniting my will to that of my superior, which my understanding, this is kind of out of my league here, so I don't want to talk too much about it because I've done limited research on it, but my understanding is that the Dominicans had issues with that, with your free will, but St. Ignatius goes on to talk about how that's not necessarily the case, and he kind of gives reasons for that. But so he talks about the 3 forms of obedience, and the reason why this is so hard is because you are submitting your will. There's a sense of pride that says like, nope, I'm going to be my decision, my way, or the highway kind of thing, which I think a lot of men especially struggle with. I have this idea, why is my boss making me want to do this? My idea is way better than this. I don't want to listen to my boss. It's this dying to yourself that gives you this ultimate freedom.
Right, yeah, and it's really the ultimate death, because what makes us persons? What is different us versus the other animals is that we have this free will, that we choose things for ourselves, and that we have a will. Animals don't have the same will that we have, so when we surrender that, it's like the ultimate death of ourselves in order to submit ourselves for something greater, which is pointing to our submission to God.
Right. And it's this paradox. The more the more you're obedient, the more free you really become.
The more you die, the more you live.
Right. So when we get back, we're going to continue this conversation on obedience. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side. So raise your glass.
So the major talk that you're talking about between the Dominicans and the Jesuits is because the fiat of Mary. That was like the center of that conversation.
Because, really?
Yeah, because.
Because if that's the case, then her fiat was not truly free, and.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Or that also like her will, her being free of sin, saying that she never she wasn't never even tempted, because her will was so quote unquote in God that she never even thought about sin. Kind of like.
Yeah, well, she did not have concupiscence.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean she wasn't tempted. Mm-hmm. Because Adam and Eve also did not have concupiscence, and yet they fell.
It's also like she would have never sinned even by default.
Yeah. Well, that's not true.
And St. Ignatius talks about how the disobedience of Adam unites the Adam with the new Adam, which is Jesus. The disobedience of Adam and the complete surrender and obedience that Jesus had towards God the Father, undoing that.
Yeah.
Which we should talk about the keys.
The fruit of the tree.
And the key, like the obedience, the authority that God gives to Jesus gives to the St. Peter, and through the obedience opens up the gates of heaven.
Did you read that in the Catherine of Siena stuff today?
Maybe. Is that where I got it?
She talks a lot about the key and how obedience, perfect obedience, strips the rust from the key.
Yeah.
From the keys to the gates of heaven. Yeah, and.
Ryan, he didn't miss the raise your glass. I just said it right when he took a drink.
Yeah, and I had a mouthful of whiskey when
I didn't realize he did, so I had to make up for that.
I had to make a choice.
Yes, and I think you made the
right one.
Either
spit all over the microphone,
or
don't say anything. Yeah.
So, okay, there's a lot still to talk about. I have this quote that I really want to say. I actually have two quotes that I really want to make sure we get to.
What are they? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a secret.
It's a secret.
2 times in a row. She's
big
like,
fat secret.
List. No.
Yeah.
No previous.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
It's great working with you, Adam.
Ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Are you gonna take a drink, David? Do it now before.
Yeah, do it before we get going.
Because it's your turn to bring us in. Okay.
It's
just chugging.
He's just.
And
He's new to this. Juan, cut him some slack.
Yeah.
This is only our 170 something episodes.
It's been less than 200. Okay.
Yeah.
And it takes what they say 10,000 hours. Okay.
The first 200 episodes don't even count.
It's been way less than 10,000 hours.
The first 10 don't count for sure.
See, seraphic.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles here with Adam Minahan. We're talking about obedience today.
Go give us a review. Be obedient.
Yes. Out of obedience, please give us a review. So, there is a work that I found, I came across, that in my brief skimming appears to be a real gem. One of those rare books that maybe everybody else knows about this book already, and it was just me. Maybe it's just me.
It's probably just us, both of us.
But the people I've talked to have not heard of this book. It's called The Dialogue of the Seraphic Virgin Catherine of Siena. And apparently she was dictating while in a state of ecstasy.
Seraphic sounds like a dinosaur. I'm just telling you, it sounds like Jurassic, Seraphic.
I have not heard that title applied to her. I assume it's like the Seraphim.
Yeah. I would assume so.
But yes, it's a sweet title.
It is. It's pretty cool.
So people were writing down the things that she was saying that God was revealing to her. That is what it seems like is happening in this book. She's
in a state of ecstasy.
Yes, and the book is written as if she's simply saying the words God is saying to her. So it's God saying it. You know,
private revelation.
Private revelation, of course. Yeah. You don't have to believe any of it's true, but it is very beautiful. And just to hear this topic spoken about with such specificity, it kind of reminds me of the way it's laid out of the Summa, in that it is broken down into sections, like with subtitles, like why specific obedience is, greater than general obedience. And so, then they'll talk about that. So general obedience would be what all people do.
Where's the breakdown of obedience? What causes the disobedience?
Yeah, so general obedience is, I did not commit any mortal sins today. Specific obedience, in this case, the way they refer to it is that I am seeking to align my will completely with God. I'm making myself completely obedient to God, as opposed to I didn't break any of his laws. I didn't break any of his laws because I sat on the couch all day, and maybe you
just buried your talents, is what you're saying?
Right, exactly.
Which is interesting. This is a St. Augustine quote that piggybacks right off of that. It says, St. Augustine says, For in the measure that we listen to our superiors, or the authority, God also listens to our prayers. So the more obedient you become, the way that you listen to people who are obedient to you, God will listen to you through your through your prayers.
Yeah, the prayers of a righteous man availeth much.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Just today in adoration, I was reading the Story of a Soul.
Story of a Soul.
Yeah, by the Little Flower, Saint Therese. And she was talking.
Luke's favorite saint, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
She's a powerhouse.
She is. Oh, did you go to?
No, I didn't get to go.
Oh, I touched my.
I know we talked about this already.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Remember?
I got excited whenever
it's like the Transformer.
Yeah.
Upgrading. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember.
Yeah.
Just like there's a relic of Saint Therese of Lisieux. I touched my
first class. She came to Tulsa.
Right. And I got a chance to pray and
was hoping to go, but
touch my scapular to it.
I could not get out of the office.
He wasn't holy. He wasn't holy enough.
Yeah. I just love money so much. I just couldn't get out. Anyway.
Yeah.
In this book, the Dialogue of the Seraphic Virgin Catherine of Siena, there is a whole treatise. She ends with obedience and talking about how great it is. In fact, even Aquinas, he asks the question: is obedience the greatest of all virtue? He says no. But he did think that, hey, this is at least a good enough question. It's a worthy question to pursue. Where I don't know, but I doubt he does that for all the virtues, And he says no because it's a moral virtue, and the theological virtues are higher. Of course, charity is the greatest of all virtues. But the thing about the virtues is that the more you perfect a virtue, the more once you perfect a virtue, it transforms into charity. Obedience, at its zenith, becomes charity, and all the virtues are that way. Because essentially, if it's a religious virtue and not a secular virtue,
natural
virtue. Thank you. If you're doing it supernaturally, meaning that it's a virtue you're doing because of the love of God, then it will ultimately transform into charity. But obedience is so important, because without it, you can't do anything right.
So I think the reason why obedience is kind of thrown along the right wayside is because, especially today, like we talk about freedom. We want to be free. I want to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of authority in today's culture. I mean, I hate saying like in today's culture. People say that all the time.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's true though.
In reality, the idea of authority has just been thrown around the wayside. And if you don't have authority, then what's the necessity of obedience? There's a hierarchy here, and if you don't have any authority, then if it's anarchy, then there's no obedience.
Right. There would be chaos without obedience.
Right. And so, like we said earlier, obedience is a submission of your will for somebody else. For something else's will, else's will. So it's the dying of self because somebody else told you, no, you have to do this.
So everyone acts in obedience to something. Either you act in obedience to something higher than yourself, or you act in obedience to your lower self. So I will either be obedient to my hunger and to my passions, therefore enslaving me, or I will learn to master myself and become free from those passions that reside within me, in order that my will and my intellect might rule, which is my higher nature, that I might serve God. And if I'm not doing it to serve God, then my lower passions will ultimately win. You know, the hunger, it's either going to be hunger or God. Okay? There's not really a middle ground, because either you're mastering yourself or you're satisfying yourself. There's not really in between. So there is another form of obedience that we didn't mention, and that's the evangelical counsel, the poverty, or the vow of obedience that some people take. You know, and obviously that's what is considered to be the perfection of.
Do you know that
obedience?
Dominicans only take the vow of obedience?
Really?
Yes, because they say that all of their vows fall under obedience anyway. The poverty and chastity, because the superiors have already said, you know, this is what we're doing. So all you need is obedience.
Interesting. I mean,
and
I've always
the
wondered,
Jesuits actually take a special vow, a fourth vow. You know, it's poverty, chastity, and obedience.
Yeah.
The Jesuits take a fourth vow, and specifically the obedience to the Pope.
Right. I did know that, which is weird when a Jesuit becomes Pope, because now he's like obedient to himself, you know?
Right.
Like, it's just kind of funny. Sometimes I, as a joke, will try to order my wife to do things out of holy obedience. Doesn't work.
Right. So
turns out that's not a good strategy.
So they also talk about that you're not supposed to, you're supposed to be obedient to superiors unless your superiors are obviously telling you to sin. That's something that you
right,
because you're ultimately obedient to God. So if it goes against the natural law or the moral law of what God has laid down, then you have to be obedient to God. So, but outside of that, we as lay people, we should be obedient to our fathers and our elders. We're obedient to the government. We're obedient to our priests. The priests are obedient to the bishops. The bishops are obedient to the Pope. The Pope is obedient to God. It's this big old hierarchy.
And ultimately, we're all obedient to God.
Well, because it's this hierarchy.
So how do you practice obedience?
It's the little things. They say that in order to have obedience, you have to have patience. So, like what you were saying about denying yourself, in fasting and prayer, we should do this for the sake of not my will, but Thy will be done. It's the supernatural virtue of obedience, which means I'm doing this not because it's what makes me feel good. I'm not praying because it makes me feel good. I get the spiritual high. I get the spiritual cookie. I'm doing it because I want to unite my will to God's will. And receive the grace. So it's these little things of making sure that you're praying on a daily basis, making sure that you have this.
Yeah, that's a good one. Locking down your prayer routine.
Right. Being obedient.
Because when you don't want to pray, you do it anyway.
And that's when it's most
obedience.
Efficacious.
Right.
Is what some of the saints say.
Yeah.
So I think
you touched on this a second ago, but what St. Catherine of Siena says is that a sign that you have the virtue of obedience is that you have patience. If you're an impatient person, that is a sign. It's not definitive, but it's a sign that you don't have the virtue of obedience. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that I started doing.
Tell me.
Independent of this episode, but
starting yesterday.
No, I started it about
I'm just joking.
A week and a half ago.
Okay.
I am driving the speed limit. Exactly the speed limit. I have been a 5 over kind of guy my whole life. Mm-hmm. Okay, in my mind, that was the speed limit, 5 over. I like to pass people on the highway, okay? When you pass somebody, it's like you beat them, okay? It's a small victory. Nobody likes being passed,
right?
Okay? And then at some point, it kind of gnawed at me very faintly. Not like it was really gnawing at me. It's like, driving 5 over, that's kind of being disobedient. I actually owe obedience to my governmental authorities, even though I don't like that very often, especially when they abuse their authority. But I still owe it to them, regardless. And so I should actually be obedient in this case and to drive the actual speed limit, especially since the mile of road right outside of our neighborhood, the whole thing is under construction. It's 25 miles an hour for the whole mile. Because people are behind you and they're like right up on you, I feel like I'm being rude, but I just have to. So driving the speed limit also takes patience.
What's the saint that was the doorman who was super obedient. His deal was that he was so obedient that if someone invited him over for dinner and said like casually like, "Hey, have a mouthful of dinner," he would only take one mouthful, no more, no less.
I do not know.
I can't remember his name, but anyway. Also, St. Francis says, "I have always found that God has been mercifully pleased to make easy for me the most difficult and painful things when I have undertaken them in a true spirit of obedience," which I thought was pretty intense.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, we're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
And cheers to Jesus.
Do you want to share what they were saying?
Keep recording?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Is there? Are we missing? Dude, there was a lot of things that I wanted to say in that episode. Surprisingly.
Well, like you didn't say anything about what Catherine of Siena was saying about Jesus.
I just wanted to say what the book was.
Oh, you weren't going to quote it?
There's so it would have taken me too long to quote.
Oh, okay.
It was I said no, there is too much. Let me sum up. But really I think the most beautiful thing about it is what you were saying, is that once you learn obedience, you have this huge freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and where the weight of your decisions, obedience is just a huge weight off your shoulders.
Right. And it's weird because, for the example, when we were talking to Father Brian O'Brien a while back ago, he was talking about how he wears the same thing every day. He does not have to stress or worry about what he wears because he's obedient I'm supposed to wear my clerical garb. So he's not having to worry about that. Mm-hmm. So thus, he's not stressed out about what he has to wear for that day. It's a complete freedom. I know I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to wear this.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of obedience that Father O'Brien does, because that's what he's the bishop has asked him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the more it's really funny that the way society today is like, do your own thing, do your own thing, do your own thing. And the more we end up doing our own thing and deviating from authority, the more stressed and chaotic things become.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think a good example, I don't know, maybe this is a good example, but it's a good example for me, is that when you raise a dog, if you are not a good leader, if you have a dog at home,
mm-hmm.
if you aren't a good leader of that dog, it thinks it's the leader of the pack. And they've studied this, and dogs who have weak owners, who don't master their dogs, those dogs who have weak owners live at a much higher level of stress, because they think they're in charge of defending the pack. Okay? They think, it's my job. Those are the ones that, are kind of out of control and they bark a lot. And whereas a good mastered dog is obedient, it's not like, they're perfect dogs, because, it takes a while to train a dog and they got to get old before they just really hit the sweet spot. But that is just an example, because they don't have obedience. They have not been trained to be obedient. They think they're in charge. They've got this huge responsibility on their shoulders, they think. Right. So, and the same thing applies to us. When we become obedient to someone who truly has authority over us, don't try to be obedient to someone who doesn't have authority over you. That's not a good idea. Because ultimately the reason this works is because you're following the authority laid out in the natural law from God. Okay? God set it up a certain way. Follow that way. Don't be obedient to your children. They are obedient to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Especially when they're young. Once they get older, it's kind of, that becomes a little different. But it's, even if what someone in authority tells you is wrong, you don't have to worry about it. It's not your problem. In fact, it would be...
As long as it's not sinful.
Right.
We're talking about
I'm like, think about, you're at work. Your boss tells you, let's do this with this client. And this is not going to work. This is the wrong strategy.
You can express it.
You can express that, but maybe your boss is such that he just said, no, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. And some people might worry about that, I should have done something else because we didn't lose the business, and I want to be the best at my job as I can. And they're like, no. Obedience. Obedience. If your parents get on to you for something because they think you did something, like, it doesn't, I don't know, that's not a good example. Anyway, even if what someone is telling you is wrong, it's just not it's not actually correct. It's morally fine, but it's just not correct. It doesn't matter. You just do it anyway. And you don't have to worry about the consequences of that behavior because you're simply being obedient. You know what I mean? Can you think of a good example? I know you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
I think other people do too, but
I do too.
I'm searching for a good example that would just be good. I just don't have one.
I think everybody understands it, though.
Anything else on obedience before we go?
Man, I had several things that I wanted to talk about, but I just didn't know exactly where we were going to go with obedience, because it's kind of, surprisingly, it's actually a big topic, because we didn't really talk about, there's the the clerical obedience of to the bishop, and they take the vows of obedience.
I didn't want to get into that because
most people,
our audience, is
right,
and the priests who are listening, they already know about it,
right. And then so now we're talking about the obedience of the domestic church. What does that look like? How do we, how do we make sure that we raise our children in an obedient fashion, which goes back to who has the authority, but God has ordained you to have the authority to raise your kids to be saints.
Right.
And thus it's your responsibility. It goes back to what we were talking about, like, it's not, when God gives you the authority, it's not for you to be a tyrant, it's for you to get other people to heaven. God has ordained it for you so that way you can get other people to heaven. So the more authority that you have, the more responsibility you have, and the more judgment will be passed on you because he's given you much.
Can I ask you a tough question?
Yeah, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to answer it correctly.
Yes. There's a wife who's Catholic. Husband, both of them were Catholic. They got married. Husband says, I'm converting, and our children are going to now be raised Methodist.
Wait, was the husband Catholic?
They're both Catholic when they got married.
He's converting to
something else.
Yeah,
Protestantism.
Sure, and he says that we're going to raise the kids
Catholic, or not Catholic.
Yeah.
What does she do? And is she morally responsible for it?
Boy, that is a tough one, because I would say that she has taken a vow to God to raise her. She's taken a vow whenever she's married to God that says, I vow to be fruitful and multiply, to be open to children. And then when the kids are, assuming they were baptized, she makes a vow to God that says, I'm standing in their place to say that I'm planning on raising them Catholic. So that vow has already taken place.
Right.
I would say that she's bound to raise the kids Catholic.
Okay. She is, in her own way. But
it's like also like what happens,
because the church has always said that it's up to the husband to establish the cult of the family.
Right.
And so it is the husband's responsibility. It's his authority. I mean, to do that. Now, so in many ways, obedience requires her to allow that.
Right.
While at the same time, it's a terrible position for the woman in this case, because she must try to pass on the faith according to the vows she's taken at their baptism, while still honoring the decision which is rightfully the husband's. I don't know the answer, specifically, but that is a tough question.
That is a tough question.
That's one interesting thing about obedience, is that the church says it wasn't Eve who caused the fall of man. It was Adam.
Right.
It seems like it's Eve. She did it first.
Right.
Then she's the one who gave, but no, she was under the authority of Adam. There's another passage in the Bible, and I didn't want to say this on the episode because I don't remember the passage and I don't really even remember exactly what it says, but I remember Pamela and I, we were talking about it when we were engaged, just like in a discussion. It was a good talk where it was talking about the husband will be saved by his actions.
Isn't that Romans 6?
I don't know, but then it says like the wife will be saved like through her, like by bearing children and and stuff.
Maybe that's not Romans 6.
And that's why I didn't want to say it, because I'm not exactly sure that's what it says, but it implies that essentially the moral conduct of the family, that the wives will not be judged at all based on it, because it's not their responsibility. It's the husband's responsibility. He is in charge morally for the family because he's the one who exercises the authority.
Well, and in Ephesians 5, it also talks about, right before it talks about wives be submissive to your husbands. Right before that, it talks about they should be mutually submissive to one another.
Right.
So, yeah,
that's a little different though, because it's talking about out of love.
Right, but
about serving one another.
I'm going back to sorry, I haven't gotten past your proposition that you
the conundrum.
Yeah, the conundrum that you proposed, because you're supposed to, you want to keep peace within the family, within the domestic church. You don't want to cause such a rift that there's a complete breakdown within the family.
The thing is that the husband exercises first authority in the family. So if he is going to take the children to a different religion, he will suffer those consequences. I don't think that the wife is going to be held I don't think at her judgment she will be held guilty for being obedient to her husband in an area where he exercises justly authority. Now, he is exercising his authority wrong. This is where it's like it's what do you call it, where it's a conundrum? It's another word for that, a paradox kind of, because on the one hand, we're to obey authority inasmuch as it doesn't go against God's law.
Right.
And so for a Catholic to take himself and his children out of the true faith seems to me clearly a violation of God's law.
Sure.
Okay? So on the one hand, he's exercising his authority incorrectly. Yeah.
All I have to say in this scenario...
I'm sure there are moral
theologians.
Yeah, moral theologians who have written about this.
I could ask. So I'm going to Washington D.C. And I'm going to.
Yeah, what are you going for?
Haley's going there for the Soul Corps.
Oh, that's right, for that education thing, right?
Yes, yeah. And so I'm going to be there as well. So I was like, hey, I'm going to tag along with you. And I talked to.
Have you ever been to D.C.?
No, never have. Never really been up to the Northeast very much. I mean,
aside from the smugness, it's a pretty cool place. It's very smug.
Very smug.
Yeah.
But I reached out to the prior of the Dominicans' House of Study up there, the Order of Preachers East Division, not division, but whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
I forget what it's called. Yeah. It's the East one.
Okay.
West, East, anyway. Father Aquinas, and he's a moral theologian.
Father Aquinas. His name
is Father Aquinas.
Like, at birth, his last name was Aquinas.
No.
Okay. So they changed their names.
Right.
Not all orders do that.
Right.
That's why I wanted to ask. It's like, you're telling me.
And so I'm going to get a chance to hang out with him. I think he's either going to give me a tour or we're going to hang out.
Is this going to be Offspring free?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
so you're just going to be
like, and for so we're going up there,
right.
And Haley's going to be in a conference for a day and a half. So I'm just going to hang out in Washington D.C. for a day and a half, just doing whatever I want to do, and then we're gonna spend the next day
looking at
together.
Big statues and stuff.
Right, going to the
DC has so many cool museums.
Right,
that's the thing about it, is it would take several days to do DC because you want to go to the Natural History Museum, the Air and Space Museum, and then of course you want to get a tour of the White House. I did that.
Right.
I got a tour of the White House in 8th grade. Yeah,
that's cool.
And then look at all the monuments and stuff. You got to go see.
So I'm gonna hang out with him.
You got to see Lincoln.
I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll ask him that question and see what he says, because he's a moral theologian. So
okay,
he should have a. I'm also going to ask him this.
I'd be
Here's-
curious to know what Carlo Broussard says about it too.
Oh yeah, he'd be good. Here's another question that I have.
Okay.
That I'm going to ask him. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. When Thomas Aquinas talks about that, there's three goods, right? The first one's the ontological good.
Yeah.
You know, the saying of like it's better to exist than not to exist.
Right.
Okay. How do you reconcile that with Jesus?
With what Judas said about Judas, it would have been better that he was never born. I don't know.
I don't know that quite. I don't know the answer to that.
To me, I think the answer, I'm guessing the answer is that it's a turn of phrase that's used, in the original language that just is like, this was an expression, common expression that.
So that was that's the only thing that I can think of to get yourself out of it is like saying that these words really weren't meant.
Right, and that in the original language, everybody knew that this is an expression that just means it's a hyperbolic phrase,
right,
used to say.
But you know what?
It was as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
To say, it's better that he was never born, and we kind of even do that. We kind of have that same phrase. We kind of do that.
It says it in at least two different spots in the Gospels.
Two different Gospels.
Matthew and Mark. And so it's just like, how do you reconcile it? So.
Well, that would be more of an argument for the Q document than anything. The fact that they both say the same phrase. Maybe there was a manuscript that they were both working off of.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
But I'm excited to hear what he has to say about that.
About the wife and the.
Well, both questions. Because I have not been able to.
I would like to hear what Father Ripperger says about the wife.
That would be a good one.
Because
we should reach out to him again and see if he'd be interested in.
Totally.
Oh, I don't know.
He's kind of busy.
He's a busy man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be an interesting discussion.
I was actually Pamela has an aunt who lives in the same small town in Colorado that he does.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that.
Because he moved back home essentially. I think
home is Wyoming.
He dated one of my father-in-law's sisters in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Father Ripperger and I were basically brothers. I mean, it's like
all right. I don't have anything
essentially
else to say
the same thing
about this.
Yeah, we get each other Christmas gifts and stuff. I mean,
yeah. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, guys.
Quick one, turn it off.
Hurry. Fast. Oh, not that button. I'm just joking.
No, not that one.
Oh, right.
There you go.